Hello everybody, welcome to my channel where plant friends do what plant friends do. My name is Darylyn.
And this is Pippa.
And this is Plant Friend Down the Street. Oh shit. Hey y'all. First video, kind of hard to believe. To be honest though, I've actually wanted to start a YouTube channel for kind of a long time, but I'm a perfectionist, so there have been delays. But anyway, I'm here now. And I'm super excited. I'm actually like kind of nervous. Feels like a lot's riding on this. JK, absolutely nothing is riding on this. This is mostly just for fun for me. But anyway, I thought today what might be kind of fun would be to talk about, so you think you want to get into plants? So if there are any beginners out there watching this, this might be a good one for you. And for any of my more seasoned, dare I say, intermediate plant friends out there, hopefully this is just a super awesome lol fest for you, because I think I'm gonna go over some stuff that we will all kind of be triggered by, or maybe just, nostalgic memories of innocence. I don't know. Regardless, this is so you think you want to get into plants. All right, so this is it. The time has come. Maybe you've been eyeing the vibes on Instagram for some time now. Maybe you've just moved to a new space that has light and could maybe accommodate some botanical friends. Maybe you were gifted a plant that you didn't ask for and didn't want, and it hasn't died. And so now you're thinking, oh, maybe I should get some more. If any or all of the above is the case, congratulations. Welcome to the dark side. So I know what you're probably thinking right now is, oh my God, houseplants. What a wonderfully wholesome, relaxing, and laid back, inexpensive hobby. That's all the experienced plant parents laughing through their teeth. Because I have news for you. It doesn't stay like that for very long at all, actually. Anyway, here are some things, some tidbits, some words of wisdom that I wish that I had known when I started my houseplant journey. If I'd actually followed my own advice, past self. If my past self had actually followed my own advice, it would have saved me a lot of time, money, sadness, failure. So I don't know what it's worth, but here's my top tips of thinking about if you want to get into plants. So the first thing that you really want to take into consideration is, why are you looking to get plants? Are you in it for the aesthetic? Are you in it for the challenge? Do you intrinsically like the idea of getting excited every time they open a new leaf? I mean, to be honest, don't we all get into it for the aesthetic? Okay, so we've established you probably are looking to get some plants because you like the way they look. And as such, you are gonna want them to stay looking nice and to be healthy. So do yourself a favor and do a little bit of research before you just trot on down to your local big box store or garden center and fill up your cart with everything that you see that you like. This will save you a lot of heartbreak and a lot of hassle down the road. And by a little bit of research, I mean a couple of things. First, figure out what you like, or at least figure out what you think you're gonna like, because your taste is definitely gonna change. Like 100%, it will definitely change. Especially since you're here watching this on YouTube, that probably means you're watching other YouTube videos, and yeah, your taste is 100% gonna change. But at least try, set yourself up to succeed, and take some time to poke around Instagram, YouTube, whatever, and at least have an idea in your mind of what you like. I can't even tell you how many plants I bought because I didn't really take the time to figure out whether or not I was looking for what I really liked. And then I didn't like them, or I didn't like them enough to give them what they needed to thrive, and they were disappointing, and I ended up giving them away or letting them die. That's controversial, yeah. It's like you're not really supposed to let plants die. But anyway, figure out what you like. What vibe are you going for? What's gonna make you feel happy in your space? what's going to make you feel like staring at it all the time. Because it's going to be in your house, and invariably you will be staring at it. Another aspect of doing a little research is figuring out what your conditions are in your house and what plants realistically are going to be able to survive in those conditions, depending on whether or not you're willing to give them any extra help. And by extra help, I primarily mean grow lights. Because newsflash, there isn't really any such thing as a low light plant. All plants will pretty much do better in a little bit more light. Short of putting it outside in full sun in the Arizona desert in the summer, there pretty much isn't a plant on this earth that isn't going to do better with a little bit more light. What I mean by that is try to get an idea of where you would want to put plants, kind of start figuring this out. And then keep in mind, what are the lighting conditions like in that spot? What's your household ambient temperature? What's your household ambient humidity? Speaking of which, do yourself a favor and get one of these. I'm serious. They are like $8 or something on Amazon, and it's seriously worth it. Get one of these and just set it where you think you'd like to put a plant. And within a couple of days, you'll be able to see, what your ambient temperature is, what your ambient humidity is. And this is going to give you a much better idea of the kinds of plants that'll do well there without any extra help. I live in Southern California, so I'm blessed with warm temperatures and pretty decent humidity without having to really do anything. But depending on where you live, that might not be the case at all. You could stick one of these bad boys in your house and find out that your humidity sits at 20% generally, that your temperature is, cold. So knowing that in advance and then doing a little bit of research to figure out what kind of plants are going to do fine there without really a ton of intervention, I cannot emphasize this enough. It's going to save you a lot of issues and also money. Speaking of money, let's talk about budgets. Because I think a lot of people, myself included, get into the houseplant hobby thinking that it is a very inexpensive way to enjoy yourself. And in theory, it could be. But the problem here is that there's a number of kind of just things about the nature of keeping houseplants and collecting houseplants that really predisposes the cost to stack up real quick. The first thing being that it's really difficult to keep the number of plants you have in your house small, especially once you start feeling like you're having success and the plants you already have are doing well. And the fact of the matter is that it's not even really the plants that are the bulk of the cost. A $5 plant that you got on sale at a nursery is going to require probably, the same amount of a cute pot and better soil and fertilizer and, grow lights maybe if you get that into it, something to climb. I tried a moss pole. I'm not so sure that I like that. Let me buy bamboo stakes. Let me do this. Let me do that. Oh, my plant outgrew its pot way faster than I ever would have expected it to. And these things definitely add up, and they add up exponentially as you get more and more plants. So think about the amount of money that you're willing to spend on your houseplant endeavor, whether you just see it as aesthetic or you see it as a hobby, because it will add up really fast. I highly, highly, highly discourage you from just going to a garden center or a big box store and walking around and putting everything in your cart that you like for a number of reasons. Reason number one is you don't probably know what any of those plants are or what they need, because big box stores have a tendency to really not label things accurately. And no offense, I'm sure that there are really wonderful, garden center employees out there, but I've been given really bad advice that's almost killed some of my plants by just finding something cute in the store that I liked and then asking the employee that was, helping me with the sale how to take care of it. Don't trust that. don't rely on the advice from the employees at the garden center. You don't know how experienced these people are with taking care of plants. For all you know, they don't even have any plants at home. And they're just parroting to you whatever's on the label from the wholesaler, who doesn't even have the plant labeled correctly. Do a little bit of research, have an idea of what you're going into, and try your best to at least get some things that you A, know you're gonna like, and B, have an idea of what the care is gonna be. This plant right here is a great example of this. This is called a calathea, and I got this plant at, I think, Home Depot, like, I don't know, 2 years ago or something. This is my second one. The first one is no longer with us. And the reason behind that is that I went to Home Depot and I popped a whole bunch of plants in my cart that I thought were pretty, and had no idea how to take care of them, and found out through trial and error that if you don't water calathea with either distilled or filtered water, it burns the leaves and kills the plant. I had already had this plant, this plant's predecessor, for a while, and it was already suffering before I figured this out, and it was too late to save it. So if I had just done a little research and known about calathea, I wouldn't have wasted the money on killing that plant. And, you know, it might still be with us. I could have saved it. All I would have had to have done would have been give it, you know, the correct water. Another reason why I really don't advise, you know, going to a store and just popping around and grabbing everything that you see is that you will probably end up with a whole bunch of plants that have really different care needs. And it's gonna be a really awkward learning curve figuring out what all of those needs are on your own. For example, the calathea needs either distilled or at the very least filtered water. It took me a long time to figure that out. And none of the other plants that I had at the time had that need. So I wasn't bothering to mix up special water just because I had one plant that had that need that I didn't even know needed that. So it was not great. Another thing is substrate. And this might not be an issue for you right away because the pot that the plant comes in from the nursery will be fine for a while. But about, I don't know, a year or so down the line, once you start having to repot these plants, you're gonna start to realize that having to mix 5 or 6 different types of soil to satisfy all of the different types of plants that you have is a huge friggin' hassle, and B, it gets really, really, really expensive. Doing research is really, really good, but you are gonna go online and you're gonna find a million different recommendations from different people for soil mixtures for the same plant. And all of them are working out for them just fine. Mixing soil really is kind of an art, a science. I honestly don't really like soil and try to use as little as possible, but that's a conversation for another day. Regardless, you're gonna get all of these different recommendations from different people for different soil mixtures for the same exact plant, and all of the different amendments that you could potentially try out. The costs really do add up. Across my plant journey, I have purchased a number of different soil amendments, including Miracle-Gro potting soil, multiple different kinds of perlite, multiple different kinds of orchid bark, horticultural charcoal, tree fern. And then I started getting into semi-hydro and got leca, and then I got into pon. So that was pumice, lava rock, zeolite. I'm sure I'm probably forgetting some other thing. Sphagnum moss. Don't forget about sphagnum moss, aka the houseplant lady's like secret sauce. Put that shit on everything. But like, the point here is that none of this stuff is free and it all adds up. And so you just have to kind of be aware that even though you think you're buying, you know, $5, $10 to $20 plants and that's it, there's a lot of other costs coming your way down the road. So just try and be aware of that, because at the end of the day, if you neglect to, you know, repot your plants and you neglect to fertilize oh, I forgot about worm castings too, speaking of fertilizer. Sorry guys, this is like kind of all over the place, but that's kind of how my brain is. So like and subscribe. But the takeaway here is that if you do neglect giving your plants the things that they need, they're not going to do well for you. You know, they'll probably die eventually, maybe sooner rather than later if you really fuck it up. So just keep that in mind. If you're getting into it because you actually want the plants to do well and kind of be a point of pride that you have a beautiful, thriving, lush, aesthetic plant, you're gonna have to invest a little bit more money than just the plant in a cute pot, unfortunately. I know. Shocking information. Another thing that I wish I had known was do not wait to start fertilizing. The plants that you have purchased from, a nursery or a garden center are almost certainly going to be in soil when you pick them up. And that soil almost certainly has some form of like slow release fertilizer in there. And so that will probably get you through 6 months to a year just fine. But I've noticed that a lot of people tell me that they've had a plant that's done really well for them for 6 months to a year and then just out of nowhere dies. And I tend to think that's because they never fertilized the plant and the slow release fertilizer that was in the soil that the plant was in when they purchased it was used up. So don't wait to fertilize your plants. A lot of conventional wisdom will tell you that, you should only fertilize your plants when they're growing, or you should only fertilize your plant from March to October during the growing season. But really, it kind of depends on a number of factors, including where you live. Like I said, I live in Southern California. It's not particularly seasonal here. Our middle of winter is basically summer for some other places. Our summer is way hotter than it ever gets other places. So my plants pretty much grow year round. Additionally, I bit the bullet and got grow lights and just kind of stopped messing around with natural light because I live on the first floor, and to be honest, I really like people to not be able to see into my house. So I have curtains over most of my windows, and getting grow lights was just so much easier for me. I don't have to deal with any of those problems anymore. But the point of that digression is that if you have grow lights on your plants, they're gonna continue to grow. So the whole fertilizing thing is kind of, it's gonna be trial and error depending on what your conditions are like. But for me, I personally fertilize my plants every time I water them. I've never had an issue. But if you are not ready to invest in grow lights and, for the time being, you want to get plants that are gonna do well in your environment without a lot of alterations to accommodate them, there very well may be a period of time in the winter when your plants stop growing, and that's okay, So it's fine to not fertilize every time you water. It's fine to not fertilize continuously or whatever, but you will need to start fertilizing your plants eventually, especially if you want them to grow. But I do think that it is, it's a common pitfall of just grabbing a couple plants at the garden center and, not fertilizing them, because they will do fine for a while. So just keep in mind, eventually you will need to start fertilizing your plants. And honestly, I wouldn't wait too long. There's just, really no benefit to waiting. And speaking of not waiting to undertake basic care for your plants, the other thing that you should not be waiting on is preventative pest control. And I know, if you're not in the plant community or if you're new to the idea, you may be thinking, pests? Plants inside the house can get pests? Yeah, they really 100% for sure can. And they can also absolutely kill your plants dead. So I think the mistake that a lot of new plant parents make is that, and this is myself included, was that you kind of get into the hobby slowly and at a low commitment mindset where you just get some plants, you don't have a ton, less than 10 in your house, and when you only have a few plants, pest control is a lot less of an issue, because if your plants aren't all clustered together and you're not bringing new plants into your house continuously, maybe you'll be lucky and you just won't have a run-in with any pests for a long time. However, what usually happens is people get a few plants and they start feeling like they're having some success and they really like it, and they very quickly go from having, 5 to 10 plants to having 50 plants. And if that sounds completely unreasonable to you, just wait. But my point is that pests are somewhat inevitable and unavoidable, but at the same time, pest prevention is a lot easier and a lot less mystifying than I think a lot of people think. And just do not wait to start treating your plants preventatively for pests, because eventually you will see something. And usually, if you've never started treating for pests before and you see something, it's already too late at that point. It probably will have spread. Certain things can be really hard to get rid of. And I personally believe that it is very, very possible and reasonable to expect no plant damage and no run-ins with visible pests in your houseplant collection, but only if you do certain things to prevent that from happening. And treating for pests preventatively is one of those things. There's a lot of different advice online about what the best pest prevention methods are. A lot of people will use, neem oil to prevent spider mites and mealybugs. A lot of people will use an alcohol and water solution. A lot of people will put their plants in the shower, and that supposedly helps, brush the pests off and disrupt whatever they're doing. I personally really, really like Captain Jack's Dead Bug Brew. It's a pesticide, but it's approved for organic gardening. It doesn't have a strong smell, it's ready to use, and I just, spritz my plants with it, and it is supposed to take care of spider mites and thrips, which are basically the top two nemeses of our community. So I think that's kind of a good deal. But at the very, very, very least, get a bottle of Captain Jack's Dead Bug Brew and spritz down your leaves in your soil once a month or so. And hopefully that will help drastically curtail any pest outbreak that you do find. Because let me tell you, a lot of people will get into houseplants and go from 5 plants to 100 plants in a year. And then when they eventually do see a pest, they've already got 100 plants and they're all clustered together, and they have to go through and they have to treat 100 plants, and it's very overwhelming, and there's a lot of time and money and materials and emotional investment in all those plants, and you absolutely can lose a plant to a pest. They absolutely can kill your plant, or at least make them look pretty beat to hell. So if you take nothing else away from this video, please treat your plants. Just, if nothing else, get a bottle of Captain Jack's Dead Bug Brew and just run with it, because your future self will thank you. Also, give up entirely on the notion of watering on a schedule. You hear this a lot, watering on a schedule, Tuesday is my watering day, or like the care cards from a lot of these plant companies. I've been seeing a lot of plant company startups lately, these corporate plant company startups. Have you guys seen that? It's really strange. They send you these plant starter kits and try to make it easy on you, and a lot of these companies, they put out these infographics that have when to water common house plants, and it'll say snake plant every 2 weeks. No, those are all very bad. That's all very bad advice. You're gonna have to learn how to recognize when your plant needs water and water your plant when it needs water. There are some types of plants that will genuinely be just fine not being watered until they are literally curling up and shriveling up and look like they're dying. Other types of plants are gonna give you absolutely zero margin of error on watering. Anthurium being one of those. And for plants like that, you're gonna have to figure out how to tell that they need water without overwatering them and rotting the roots, or underwatering them and ending up with leaf damage. For plants like that, the best way to kind of do it is to just take an indication from how damp the substrate is. You can get something called a moisture meter. I actually don't really like those because they really only work reliably if you're using pretty much a standard garden soil. They won't read accurately if you've amended it to be a lot more well draining. RIP many plants that I stupidly trusted that water meter for. However, one method that is always reliable is just stick your finger in the soil and feel whether or not it's wet. 100% accuracy every time, I promise. And then there's other types of plants that just basically never need water, like cactus. And it's gonna kind of be up to you to figure out what that is. And of course, the type of soil that they're in is gonna greatly affect how often they need to be watered. You're just gonna have to figure it out. And if you end up with damaged leaves or a couple of dead plants, it's just all part of the journey. So that leads me to my next piece of advice, which is figure out what works for you and what works well for you before you allowed your collection to explode in numbers. And I'll tell you why. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier about having an idea of a budget and how much you want to spend in your hobby. But it's not only about the amount of money that you could spend, it's also about setting yourself up for success. And here's why. You're going to hear about a whole bunch of different approaches to keeping your plants. And you may be tempted to kind of experiment a little bit, which is good. However, it's really, really, really going to be to your benefit to have methods that you know are reliable and that you know are going to work for you in your conditions. Here's an example. So for me, my tried and true preferred method of keeping plants was to keep them in a general chunky aeroid mix in a clear orchid pot. Now, I eventually did kind of move on more to wanting to experiment with semi-hydro and different soil amendments and work on things to really optimize my plant's potential to thrive, but also to just make the care a little easier on me. And for me, I found myself struggling to keep up with keeping everybody watered how they wanted to be watered. But that would absolutely have continued to work just fine for me if I hadn't wanted to branch out, which is totally fine. However, there are some people who absolutely swear by terracotta, and they keep all of their plants in soil in a little bit of a heavier mix in terracotta. And they have philodendrons in that, they have anthurium in that, they have alocasia, they have hoya, and they just are able to make it work. It works for them, and their plants all look great and they're totally satisfied. However, if you are someone who is generally keeping your plants in a clear plastic orchid pot, and then you get something in the mail and you're like, oh, let me try this in terracotta, and you use the exact same mix that has been working well for you in the plastic orchid pot, and then you put it into terracotta, well, I have news for you. Terracotta is moisture wicking. And so that super chunky, well-draining mix that worked amazing in a clear plastic pot that is not moisture wicking and actually keeps the moisture in is not going to function the same way. And I'm telling you this from actual experience because I love my clear orchid pots and they work great for me. And then I ordered a plant and decided I wanted to try it in terracotta, use the exact same soil mixture, and that plant is no longer with us. It died real quick. And it wasn't a cheap plant, and I was sad about it. I'm still sad about it. But anyway, the point of this whole digression is figure out something that works for you and stick with it until you're comfortable enough to start experimenting. It's just going to be so much easier on you. You're going to have a much easier time of keeping track of everything, of who needs to be watered, what they all like. Just figure that out. And the other thing about figuring out what works for you and sticking with it is it's gonna save you a lot of money, because if you have all your plants in their nursery pots and haven't changed anything and then decide, oh, I wanna put my plants in terracotta, and you do it all at once, there's probably gonna be some casualties. It's just kind of the way it goes. So if you do wanna experiment, do it one plant at a time, but also keep in mind that you're gonna have to keep track of a lot more variables if you have a whole bunch of different plants and different soil mixtures and different types of pots. So I guess what I'm saying is slow your roll. Man, this I feel like is one of the most kind of controversial but commonly given advice that do as I say, not as I do, because you see so many people in the plant community, and I'm not even talking about people who are on YouTube. I'm talking about just people that I've met both online and in person locally who got into houseplants, kind of got bit by the bug, and went from having 0 houseplants to having 100, 150, 200 plus houseplants in the span of a year. That is no shade to the people out there that have collections of houseplants in the triple digits, because honestly, there's a lot of people out there that have that many plants and it's manageable for them and they do really well and they have gorgeous plants. But I feel like what always happens with those people that just get in way too deep, way too fast, is that eventually they get a pest or just something else goes wrong all at once. And dealing with it all all at the same time is just completely overwhelming. And it becomes a huge crisis, and it's super stressful, and they end up losing a lot of plants and a lot of money, because anything that happens at a much larger scale is going to cost a lot more money to fix. So I know it's really, really difficult to act with restraint when it comes to houseplants, because for the most part, they're really, really accessible to buy. And especially if you have a decent amount of disposable income that, you know, is for you to enjoy, denying yourself something that you can literally click a button and have delivered to your door, or you can go to a store and grab and take home right away, it's really, really, really hard. But I promise that it will be worth it in the long run, because you're gonna have your first issue with pests. You're gonna have your first issue with root rot. You're gonna have your first issue with just not noticing that something was wrong and then not catching it in time, and you're gonna have leaf damage. You're gonna have to rehab the plant. It's so much easier to deal with all of that. So much easier when you have fewer plants. And you will learn quickly, you'll level up fast, and add to your collection at a reasonable pace. Don't go too crazy. You have to also take into consideration how much space you have, and even if you have a huge house, how many spaces in your house really are accommodating to plants that have the natural light. If you're not willing to invest in grow lights right away, you got to take these things into consideration, because you get a whole bunch of plants and put them in places that they don't want to be, you're gonna have a bad time. So slowing your roll is honestly one of the biggest favors that you can do for yourself, because another thing is that even when you bring things into your house that you think you really like, eventually you may kind of realize that some of the stuff you have, you don't like it. It's not working out for you. It isn't for you. You're not getting the growth that you wanted. It doesn't look the way you wanted it to, and it may not be for you. So you can save yourself a lot of money and stress and unpleasantness in general by just being a little bit more intentional about how fast you're bringing new plants into your home. And also, clearly, the more you bring new plants into your home, the more likely you are to introduce a pest. So I would really, really wait until you have a workable pest prevention method down and a decent routine for disinfecting and quarantining new plants that you're bringing into your house before you really go crazy. Because even though there are a lot of people that keep huge collections of plants, I think recently Harley G said she had something like 650 plants, which to me is just insane. People do it and they're really successful at it, but those people who are doing it successfully did not go from 0 to triple digit plant collections in 6 months or a year, or even, several years in some cases. A lot of these folks, they really have brought in the plants slowly over time. And I think that in the long run, that's really some of the best advice that anyone can give anyone that's really getting into any sort of hobby that's like collecting based, but specifically with plants, because they are living things and they can die and have issues. And just please trust me on this one. Your future self will thank you profusely. And I think the last thing that I want to talk about that's really good and really important, and I wish that I had known the value of this sooner, is find a community. For the vast majority of the time that I've been keeping plants in my house, and mind you, prior to getting into aeroids a couple of years ago, I had been keeping orchids for like 10 years. And I know what you're thinking. 10 years? How is it possible that she's had plants for 10 years? She looks so impossibly young and beautiful and vibrant. And thank you. I agree, I do look impossibly young and beautiful and vibrant, but actually, I'm a 32-year-old lady. And as such, I've had plants for a long time. I digress again. For the vast majority of my plant keeping career, my plant journey, as it were, I didn't really have much of a community. I didn't have any plant friends. And let me tell you, there has been Nothing, absolutely nothing. Not a single YouTube channel, not a single product, not a single online resource, not a single book, any of those things that have been anywhere near as valuable to me in helping me learn and grow and do a better job and enjoy my hobby more than finding my plant community. I can't tell you how invaluable it is. And it might take a while. It might not be something that you just hop into some groups online and find people you click with automatically. But once you do find those plant friends, it's just the most wonderful thing. It's such a great privilege to have a group of people that you genuinely like and who genuinely like you, who want to help you do a better job, keep your plants healthier and happier. And I really think I get like more enjoyment out of my plants now that I can share them with people who appreciate them as much as I do. And also the value of community in growing your collection on a budget, it absolutely cannot be overstated. Trading plants with friends is so fun because not only are you able to save a lot of money and get things essentially for free, but I just find it to be so fun to have a piece of a plant that came from someone that I, love and cherish. I think it's really fun to have like plant siblings or like plant twins, and I can't recommend it more. I in general tend to be a little bit more apprehensive to reach out to people. I kind of keep to myself a little bit, and so I wasn't joining groups, I wasn't going to meetups, I wasn't commenting on people's posts on Instagram, I wasn't commenting on YouTube videos, and I was kind of just going it alone, enjoying my plants on my own, talking the ears off of all of my very, very lovely, supportive, wonderful family members and my poor boyfriend. But eventually I did find a group that was a little bit smaller that I did want to join, and I got active in there and started attending, the Friday night plant happy hours that we put on. And I am not exaggerating when I say I've made some very close friends from doing that. And anytime that there's an issue or somebody's looking for a plant that they really want to add to their collection, we use each other as a sounding board, and it's just really made things a lot more fun. It's always more fun to share your passions with people who are like-minded. So if you take nothing else away from this video, figure out pest prevention, but also find a community. Like, don't wait. It really has been just the best part of the whole plant hobby is, making friends and sharing your plants and just having fun. So I think that's it for today, but I have a lot of really, really awesome ideas of things to talk about and things to do on this channel. I have lots of fun ideas for recurring series that will be exploring topics on this channel, lots of really exciting projects, experiments. There's gonna be a lot of kind of like trial and error, fucking around and finding out, see what works. And I think it's just gonna be really fun. I'm really excited to meet a whole bunch of new people on YouTube. So yeah, thanks so much for chilling with me. I hope to see you again real soon. Bye. Like and subscribe.